You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL. Happy Halloween, everybody. Episode 49. We are live on a Tuesday. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here with me, tapped in on the show. As we get into the show tonight, please make sure to go ahead and like the stream, share the show wherever you may be watching. As always, subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell on YouTube as well so you never miss any of our posts. You already know about the QR code in the corner of the screen that we mention on every single show. Scan that for every bit of podcast and social media content at the NFL with AJL. Hashtag the NFL with AJL. If you can't find us, you're simply not looking hard enough. Again, happy Halloween to everybody. If you're out there trick-or-treating, listening to the show, appreciate you getting me in on your candy run. I saw Patrick Star walking down the road in my neighborhood, and I'm like, that's a dope costume. SpongeBob being one of my favorite cartoons, really still now, but especially when I was a kid. But yes, as always, you could have been anywhere else in the world, and you're right here with me, tapped in on the show, episode 49. Sorry we didn't have a show on Friday. It was your boy's 26th birthday. The birthday was great. I want to give a shout out to everyone who might be listening right now that reached out, supported me, came out with me that night. I had a great time. Year 26, I want it to all be about consistency and continuing to bring value to you guys, just growing every day as a person. But we got a packed show as the NFL trade deadline came and went. We're going to react to that, grade some of the trades that happened. The Chiefs and 49ers lose as the Niners have now lost their third straight football game. Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles. He's done. The Vikings made a trade for a quarterback and week 9 power rankings. Let's jump right into the show as the NFL trade deadline did go ahead and kick off for us. It ended today at 4 p.m. Some actual trades that did go down today. The Seahawks trade for defensive lineman Leonard Williams. The Giants received a 2024 second and a 2025 fifth-round pick, and this seems like a Seattle Seahawks type of move. We've seen them in the past make moves on the defensive line. We remember Frank Clark from a couple of seasons ago, and Seattle wants to continue to be that team to rush the passer, make a quarterback uncomfortable. That is what they do. That is part of their identity, and we know in today's NFL that has to be a stipulation if you want to be a successful team, and we see the Seahawks right now are a 5-2 team in the NFC. I believe I have that record right. I feel like I might have butchered that, what are they? No, are they 5-2? Are they 6-2? 5-2. I knew they had a bye. I was like, did they play 8 games? But I was confident with that 5-2 record. The Seahawks are in the lead in the NFC West. They are wanting to take control of this division. People are not wanting to, the franchise is not going to be counting out Geno Smith playing the way he is this year. JSN, DK Metcalf, obviously Devon Witherspoon, even though we know he's battled some injuries as well. So the Seattle Seahawks making the trade for Leonard Williams. I have no problem with this move. And the Giants get some pretty good compensation as well. 2 picks, but not to mention it being a next year second round pick and then a 5th round pick in the following year as well. So I'm not mad about the compensation for either team. And the Seahawks make this trade because, again, they want to rush that passer better. And we know the Giants are in the depths of the NFL right now. We saw them possibly being sellers at this deadline. And what was kind of funny is I was going to talk about buyers and sellers from the trade deadline. I think we're going to do that on the next episode because we had some heavy rumors and actual trades from the deadline that unfolded today. I didn't see the Giants being a team that would actually be sellers or really do anything at the trade deadline because I'm like, one, who could they bring in? They're such a rough team. I think they all understand, well, not as a team because they're going to have that confidence to go further. But people looking at the Giants know that the Giants are probably far gone this year. And I was wondering who could they really ship out? Where clearly Leonard Williams goes to Seattle. Now the Jags trade for the Vikings guard Ezra Cleveland. They also exchange a 6th rounder for him as well. Now you see the Vikings sending out one of their guards, and we know Ezra Cleveland is a offensive lineman that did sign not too long ago with the Minnesota Vikings, and we know that he's provided a decent role for this team as well. And you kind of wonder, you see Kirk Cousins tear his Achilles. Now we have Ezra Cleveland getting shipped out as well. Again, a 6th rounder also in that package being exchanged for him, going over to the Jaguars. But when I look at the Vikings, we understand that Joshua Dobbs is now in place of Kirk Cousins. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But I would think you would want one of your better offensive linemen in an interior O-line that's trying to rebuild and trying to get better week over week. And even the fans and the analysts see that. You would think that they would want to keep one of their key pieces, but nonetheless, they ship him out. The Jags are going to benefit from him. And we know the Jags are steadily trying to build their O-line as well, as they have a Trevor Lawrence who is looking to be one of the top elite quarterbacks in this game, as they have a Tank Bigsby, as they have a Travis Etienne. A lot of moving parts with that team. And we know football is won and lost in the trenches. So I like the move for Cleveland, I like the move for the Jags and for Ezra Cleveland himself to go to a great team like the Jags. But with it happening with the Vikings, it did make me wonder because, one, you're going to want to have that protection for the replacement of Kirk Cousins, but two, especially with it being Joshua Dobbs, who I'm not very high on, um, who I'm not very high on realistically going over to Minnesota. Now, the Vikings trade for Josh Dobbs, as I just mentioned. They trade for Josh Dobbs and a 7th-round pick. They pick up a 6th-rounder from I want to make sure I have it correctly. The Vikings traded for Josh Dobbs. They pick up a 6th-rounder from this deal, and they send out a 7th-rounder as well. So you see that Kirk Cousins had to have a replacement. We see the Minnesota Vikings after they beat the San Francisco 49ers. We understand that the Vikings were looking to turn the corner. I even said it. The Minnesota Vikings had turned the corner. They beat the Niners 22-17. Brock Purdy played the way he did. That not Vic Fangio. That Brian Flores defense stepped up, played the way that it was supposed to. And the Vikings that was supposed to come around the entire season, it felt like, actually came out in that Niners and Vikings game. But now you see Josh Dobbs coming in to replace Kirk Cousins. And with the Vikings sitting at a record of 4-4, it felt like they were really in the driver's seat to possibly take over this division or at least compete with the Detroit Lions for the NFC North. I don't trust Josh Dobbs to take this Vikings team really to, any type of success, really. I mean, look where he just came from with the Cardinals. I understand the build around him, but Josh Dobbs' numbers even then weren't jumping off the page. He wasn't making ridiculous plays. He wasn't doing the things that I believe Kirk Cousins can do inside this Vikings offense now halfway throughout the year, in order to see what the Vikings are going to do. But I do understand that the Vikings had to make a move for a quarterback here. Not going to depend on a whole lot from Josh Dobbs, and we'll get into this actual trade and, Kirk tearing his Achilles and the Vikings schedule and everything. We'll hear more about it. But this was one that, again, wasn't a head scratcher because we know that Minnesota had to make a move. But Joshua Dobbs out of all quarterbacks, all right, we'll see about that. Now, the Bears traded a 2nd-rounder to the Washington Commanders to pick up Montez Sweat. I thought this was a decent trade. I don't like the 2nd-round pick aspect because I don't believe – it's not even that I don't believe Montez is worth a 2nd-round pick, but understanding where the Bears are right now, again, a team that feels pretty far gone. I feel like the teams that make moves at the NFL trade deadline, whether you're buyers or sellers, if you're a buyer, you're on the verge. You have a weakness. You need something. If you're a seller, you're looking for draft capital. You're possibly rebuilding. It's a team that's not doing too well. So when I see the Bears, a team not doing too well, go and grab from, of course, another team that's not doing too well, taking Montez Sweat, I really would have preferred Montez to stay with the Washington Commanders. Of course, Chase Young gets out of there as well. So that was just the first domino of this falling. But we see Washington. Yes, they are a team that's got our, Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell making things happen offensively. But with Ron Rivera still being that head coach and understanding that this team does have a long way to go to grow, maybe that was some of the mindset in sending it out. Because yes, Montez Sweat can provide for the Bears, no doubt. But I would have liked to see him go to a better destination. Now, maybe the biggest deal of the day, Chase Young traded to the San Francisco 49ers for a 3rd-round pick. And we saw that this Chase Young trade was possibly going to happen, whether it was in the offseason, whether it was just coming into the season, whether it was coming around this deadline, because Chase Young, despite having 12.5 sacks in his rookie year, despite winning defensive rookie of the year, despite being that great player coming out of college, he dealt with the ACL injury. He dealt with injuries the year before. And we saw Washington not pick up the 5th-year option. And that just said something to me right there. I knew in that moment that Washington was not thinking in the long term, because we know when someone picks up a 5th-year option, the deal is coming. They believe in you. And he's still on a fully guaranteed deal, being the 2nd overall pick out of this draft. So the Niners feels like they're stealing another great defensive lineman, 2nd overall pick, arguably the best player in this draft in Chase Young, now on that defensive line with the Bosa, with every pass rusher that San Francisco presents. Chase Young gets to have a hand in that and be in the mix. And again, I knew Washington wasn't going to keep him, but shout out to the Niners for bringing Chase Young in. I think we're going to see a great bit of Chase Young in the back half of this year. We know Shanahan loves his defensive linemen. We know that the culture and that coaching staff over in San Francisco loves to have their defensive linemen play a key part in that defense. And we know the gauntlet of names that is up there on that defensive line. So I think this is a great landing spot for Chase Young to kind of reinvigorate his career, get into a good culture and system, and really find success here. in the NFL. Now, I expected the Lions to be buyers at this deadline as well, and even specifically for their receiving core. And they were. They bring in Donovan Peoples-Jones from the Browns. 2025 sixth rounder is sent out for him, of course. And we see that there is a Josh Reynolds who is actually performing very well when you take a look at his numbers and the plays that he's making for the Detroit Lions this season. We see an Amon-Ra St. Brown. We see an emergence of Jamison Williams. We see a Sam Laporta. And now they're bringing in Donovan Peoples-Jones to go next to a David Montgomery when he comes back. We see Jahmyr Gibbs just break out. So the Lions are clearly thinking offensively driven, knowing that they're in a weak NFC, knowing that they have a chance to really go and make a case for this division, maybe even get into that NFC title game. I'm not mad at this move at all. Now, I don't think DPJ was the guy I necessarily would have targeted, but we know a Devontae Adams couldn't have necessarily come over here. He's a number one receiver. He's clearly unhappy in Vegas for a reason. I would have possibly liked an Adam Thielen maybe to come over from not Minnesota, Lord, from the Carolina Panthers, but DPJ, maybe he's about the same right now. Again, they get him for a sixth rounder. Credit to Dan Campbell and Jared Goff and really what that entire offense and team is doing. And the Vikings are just clearly, season isn't going the greatest. They don't even understand what's happening with Deshaun Watson. So they're just going to stack up these picks. And the last actual trade that went down at the trade deadline, the Bills trade for Rasul Douglas and the Packers 2025 fifth rounder. They send out a 2024 fourth rounder. So basically swap a third and a fifth and also bring in Rasul Douglas. And we knew that the Bills needed this because we've seen a Micah Hyde. We've seen a Jordan Poyer battle with injuries this season and in the past. And Buffalo is a team that has to stay solid. They have to stay consistent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not saying they're not a solid team defensively because we all know that they are. I do think they could be a little more consistent in that secondary play, but more than anything, staying healthy. I kind of expected the Packers to be sellers at this deadline as well, but I also had that same mindset of the Giants. Who would they realistically be able to ship off? For what amount could they actually get back for them? Well, the Bills identify a weakness in their secondary. They make a deal with the Packers to bring Rasul Douglas in, who's a respectable corner. I think over there in that Bills defense, he's going to fit in well. I think he's going to find his role. I think we can see Rasul Douglas making some plays on a bigger stage, really just by default of course, playing for the Buffalo Bills. But I want y'all in the comments and in the chat, let me know what you think about the actual NFL trade deadline that did go down today, ending at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Now, there were a few heavy rumors, 3 specifically, that I just wanted to get into a little bit here. So the Ravens were apparently entering as front runners for Derrick Henry, but the Titans said not only Derrick Henry, but DeAndre Hopkins were staying put, which they did at the deadline, unless a major offer comes in, which clearly it did not at this point. And it was also clarified that the Cowboys did not inquire on anyone, which I thought was just kind of a smoke and mirrors thing. I don't think the Cowboys need anything right now besides a quarterback, and we know Dak isn't going anywhere. I say that because I don't believe Dak will take them where they want to go, but the Cowboys are loaded offensively and defensively. They have one of the loadest, most well-rounded rosters in the league. Just like Kyle Shanahan with the Niners said, everyone that they need to go where they need to go is inside that building. So I didn't think that D-Hop or Derrick Henry possibly needed to go to the Cowboys. Why? To pay more big money to possibly an aging player? Didn't they kind of learn that with Ezekiel Elliott, who of course wasn't aging at the time, but ironically they pay him and then he falls off the cliff. But knowing that the Ravens could have possibly entered as a front runner for Derrick Henry would have really changed a lot of things, I feel like, in the AFC, because you not only give Lamar Jackson that comfort of Derrick Henry behind him, which might not have been the best move, understanding how Derrick Henry is aging and not necessarily hitting the clips that we've expected him to hit, but when you run the football as much as you do and you're as big of a body and take the wear and tear that you do, that's going to naturally happen. But knowing that, Harbaugh, knowing that Lamar could have had Derrick Henry at his disposal in that Todd Monken offense, I think we would have, just naturally seen that Ravens offense grow to another step, become more of a rushing prowess on that side of the ball and continue to make their case in the AFC. You guys will see where I have them later on in my power rankings. Now, there was a big rumor of possibly Pat Surtain, PS2, going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and this would have been a wild move. Now, we see Kevin Byard obviously go from the Titans over to the Eagles in that trade. Corner gets acquired by Philadelphia, and we also see Denver. I think before Denver was able to beat the Chiefs, which we're going to talk about here in our NFL Week 8 recap coming up shortly, Denver being able to beat the Chiefs probably kind of stalled out this, trade move from Patrick Surtain to the Eagles. But the Eagles, I believe it. Howie Roseman is aggressive. Nick Sirianni is part of that culture. All of that coaching staff, I know they think alike. They think aggressively. That's why Philadelphia is a 7-1 football team. That's why Philadelphia, even though they might shoot out 38-31 with the Commanders and fumble twice in the red zone, still be able to come out and win football games. Patrick Surtain to the Eagles would have been an insane pickup for that secondary, doubling down on a strength that they do have. Of course, they could still improve on it in some aspects, and that's why there was the rumor of Pat Surtain going to the Eagles, because if Howie Roseman sees any sort of liability or weakness or sense of improvement for his team, he's going to go out and make that happen. People are asking why Julio Jones comes in. I kind of feel the same way as well, but Julio, if he's used correctly at this point in his career, he might only give you 250 and 300 yards. But if he's only on snaps inside the 4-yard line, I think we all understand who more than likely might have that target. So just kind of coming back from that, some Pat Surtain to the Eagles, I believe that this could have been a possibility. Pat Surtain lining up in that Eagles secondary on that Eagles defense that is so smash mouth and serious at this point in the season. I would have totally been here for it. And then we had another Vikings trade rumor, who they were ironically the most active team at this deadline, along with the Washington Commanders as well, shelling out the defensive line. Apparently, Jameis Winston. Now, this has been proven to be fake news by Nick Underhill of New Orleans Football. Jameis Winston to the Minnesota Vikings was apparently something that was in talks, in the works. Jameis was excited for the opportunity. We know Kirk Cousins just tore his Achilles. Derek Carr seems to be clicking more and more inside the Saints offense, as much as people might or might not like it. And as much as Jameis wants to get that starting opportunity in New Orleans, and according to reports, still believes he can, I wouldn't have blamed Jameis for wanting to go to Minnesota. I wouldn't have blamed the Saints for wanting to ship him out, and I wouldn't have blamed the Vikings for wanting to bring him in. Now, do I believe Jameis Winston would have had that effect for the Vikings? Absolutely not. I saw Jameis in a couple of games with New Orleans after the Sean Payton era, a little this year, a little last year. I wasn't really a fan of it. Okay, even when he was healthy, even when he was able to play at the highest level, it still was not a high level of football for a team built like the Saints. The Vikings don't have any time to waste, which is why I was confused. Well, I won't say the Vikings won't have any time to waste. I believe the Vikings still have a formidable roster. They're better than the record that they're showing us right now. We know that one-score games can be you know, um, can be their downfall. And do they believe that Jameis Winston really would have been able to solve that? Do they believe that Jameis Winston, with a recovering Justin Jefferson and a Jordan Addison, would have been able to give them the targets that they need? Would have Jameis Winston been able to be comfortable with TJ Hawkinson? That is all very well possible because of the weapons that I just named off inside of Kevin O'Connell's system, having the comfort of a Brian Flores defense behind him. But I believe Jameis Winston, as the player that he is, would not have been much of an upbringing for the Vikings season. And really, I don't even know if it would have been a lateral move. It would have been a clear decline. We know Kirk Cousins is one of the better quarterbacks in this league. So really, anytime you're going to move on to an alternate option from Kirk Cousins in the middle of the year, more than likely you're going to go to a downgrade, because you're not grabbing any star quarterback at this point in the NFL season. Want to take a look at some of the chats here. Blah, blah, get to Levis. Just kidding. I'm actually going to possibly talk about Levis on Friday. I ran out of a little bit of time for prep on the show. I wanted to talk about the Falcons benching Desmond Ridder as well. Darby, appreciate that. Trav504, who dat? Absolutely. This guy, of course, is offering me stuff on Twitch to promote my channel. Not interested. I appreciate it, though. Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles. It's out for the season. Josh Dobbs steps in via trade. And you want to go ahead and get to the question of how well will Josh Dobbs actually do in the back half of the year for the Minnesota Vikings. And when you just take a look at what Josh Dobbs has done so far this season for the Cardinals, that's why I wasn't very confident about Minnesota going ahead and grabbing him. Josh Dobbs, 63% completion on the year, 1,569 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 picks. Obviously came into the league in 2018 with the Steelers. Of course, he goes and plays for the Titans, now with the Cardinals, and is going to be going over and playing for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, his best game this year was 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And it's not even that I'm just sitting here rolling through the stats, judging the type of player that he is. I remember Josh Dobbs when he played in Tennessee with Alvin Kamara, and Josh Dobbs and Alvin Kamara had beat Georgia, and I believe it was 2017, maybe 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And at that moment, I knew Josh Dobbs was talented, but once he came over to the NFL, I was like, yeah, this guy, he just doesn't have what it takes, really. to play in this league. He doesn't have what it takes to play at a high level, be very successful in this league. And when you look at the fact that, again, the Arizona Cardinals are a 1-7 football team as they send Josh Dobbs out, and rightfully so. They know Josh Dobbs isn't it. Clayton Tune's possibly going to step in. We thankfully and kind of ironically already see Kyler Murray getting back into the picture, which feels a little sooner than I expected it to be. I would think that Arizona would possibly shut Kyler down since, again, they're a 1-7 team. Like, do you really want to risk him coming back possibly early from a non-contact ACL if the team has no chance in making the playoffs? They're a 1-7 team, unless it's some Andrew Luck Colts type of comeback, which if you expect Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray to do that, then I guess so be it. Let's get back over into Josh Dobbs actually with the Minnesota Vikings, though. It's not even a lateral remove. Like I said just a minute ago, it's clearly a downgrade here. And that's going to be a given when you're losing a Kirk Cousins, when you're having to bring someone in to replace him at this point in the season. But when you even go and look at the Vikings schedule. So for the rest of the year, at Falcons, hosting the Saints, at Broncos, hosting the Bears, at Raiders, at Bengals, hosting the Lions, hosting the Packers, and then at Lions to end the year. The games on this schedule that bother me for them are both matchups against the Lions, the Bengals, maybe the Broncos, the way that they just played. Maybe they've turned a possible corner. We're talking about them later in the show. And then also the Minnesota Vikings, or not the Minnesota Vikings, Lord, my New Orleans Saints. The Saints, that defense is going to be able to see that defense is going to be able to see this Vikings offense, talking about the Saints with no Kirk Cousins. Then you're talking about the Bengals seeing this team with no Kirk Cousins. Then the Lions twice, obviously once at home, once on the road. So I would say the Saints, Bengals, Lions twice, and possibly the Broncos are going to be the games to really fret about here. Could they beat the Falcons? Yeah. Could they beat the Bears? Yeah. Could they beat the Raiders? Yes, absolutely. Could they beat the Packers? Absolutely. We just saw them do it, but we could also see the Packers being a divisional rival, winning that football game as well. So I don't see Minnesota at this point in the year with them holding that record of 4-4. I can't see them being above 500 football team. This is possibly a 6 to 8 win football team at this point. And I hate to say that. I just put out the short of me talking about how the Vikings have turned the corner. Look what they did in this game. Kirk Cousins was playing lights out. The way that he diced up that San Fran defense, what they were doing without Jefferson. Jordan Addison was emerging. The O-line was trying to get better. And then this happens. And it's exactly how it felt when it happened with Aaron Rodgers. It felt like the Jets had turned the corner coming into the season because of them bringing in Aaron Rodgers, and clearly the Achilles injury happens. I hate it for Vikings fans. I hate it for Kirk Cousins because it's a non-contact. He's just literally looking to move through the pocket, and the Achilles unfortunately pops, gives out on him. But I'm sure we'll see Kirk possibly go the same route as Aaron Rodgers, maybe try to go through Neil Elitrosh, get that early on surgery that Cam Akers also experienced, because now we see Aaron Rodgers throwing passes back at practice, taking drop backs. Not too much that I can dig into here for Josh Dobbs. Does he walk into a good situation? Yes. Brian Flores led defense. Kevin O'Connell trying to turn the corner. The O-line is trying to get better. Alexander Madison, Alexander Madison, Jordan Addison. We see Justin Jefferson's getting healthier. They're now 3-0 without Justin Jefferson. So the things that Joshua Dobbs is going to have at his disposal could fare well for him. But I believe Josh Dobbs, as the quarterback himself, is not going to necessarily rise to the occasion and ultimately be able to take advantage of the situation that he's in. Let's go ahead and get into week 8 of the NFL season. NFL week 8 recap coming up right now as the Chiefs lose to the Broncos 24-9 behind Patrick Mahomes' 2 interceptions, his illness, total of 5 turnovers on the day for the Kansas City Chiefs. And really, when you look at this game was so close down to the end. It really came down to Sky Moore's 4th and 2 drop pass, which was absolutely back-breaking with about 7.5 minutes to go. And that would have made it a 1-score football game. But you see, Patrick Mahomes was pressured all game long by Denver and really kept off the field due to how well Denver ran the football, which was very impressive, knowing that the Chiefs defense, what Steve Spagnuolo has done this season. The Chiefs now have more turnovers than more takeaways this year. They had 11 turnovers and 11 takeaways walking into this game. So it was a wash on the defensive side of the ball. In terms of turnovers and takeaways for the turnover margin. Now they have more turnovers and takeaways this season. They are negative in that category. And that's not something I thought I'd see really at any point with this team, knowing what this offense can be and how the Chiefs defense was really impressive. But people are talking about Patrick Mahomes being sick, etc. Stop that. Let's go ahead and put a stop to that right now because this guy won an AFC championship, a Super Bowl MVP on a bum ankle and had a big time scramble in the Super Bowl and was even making plays in this game and had a big time scramble in this game as well to convert a first down early on. And I get it. You want to give him his praises. You want to let him overcome more adversity. You want to get him as close to that Michael Jordan comparison as you feel like you can get. And I understand that because Patrick Mahomes has that capability to go down as the best quarterback of all time. He's already top 6 for me, and I've told y'all that. But Patrick Mahomes was not using this as a discount for him. He was not using this as an excuse. He said it didn't affect his play. It was just stomach stuff. It was what it was. So this whole being sick thing for Patrick Mahomes, I'm out on that. Did he possibly play like he was sick? Sure. But I want to talk about the quarterback that wasn't sick on the flip side of the ball for Sean Payton. And yes, I'm talking about Russell Wilson, who had a day, if you look at the numbers, 12 for 19, 114 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. And let's just put this into perspective real quick. So Russell Wilson in his career averages, on a season, about 3,700 yards, 28 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 65% completion per season in his career. This year, would you believe it or not, a 3-5 Broncos team who had one of the worst defenses in the NFL, had one of the worst offenses in the NFL, losing to the Raiders and Commanders coming into this year and just not looking great. Russell Wilson, amidst all that, is on pace for a record average year. 3,428 yards, 34 touchdowns, 8.5 to 9 interceptions, however you want to cut it, and then 66% completion. So he's quietly having a good season and is getting more comfortable with Sean Payton, getting more comfortable with that Broncos offense within those schemes. And, again, Russ's numbers aren't gaudy. Again, only completing 12 passes, 114 yards. But the 3 touchdowns to me say a lot, and he didn't make mistakes. Plus, Denver ran the ball over 40 times in this football game, but Denver is also 12th in rush yards per game. So what that tells me is Sean Payton is realizing his strengths in this moment, understanding that if he can keep the ball out of Russ's hands, keep it very simple for him, Russell Wilson is possibly not going to struggle in talking about the rushing production. 40 rushes for 153 yards. Javonte Williams finishing with 27 carries for 85 yards. And if you want to stack up those Russell Wilson numbers into where it, lines up in his career, if you look up his career stats, that Russell Wilson that we knew from 2014 or really 2015 all the way to 2020, when he really got on that peak of 35 touchdown passes, 34 touchdown passes, 34 again, 40 touchdown passes, those were the years where he was averaging about 3,800, 3,700 yards, like I was just mentioning with his stat line. Russell Wilson is on pace to have his best year since his second to last season in Seattle, when he threw for 4,200 yards, which is almost a career high, 40 touchdowns, which is a career high, a 105.1 passer rating. He's on pace for one of his best seasons since then and for a top 3 to 4 statistical season of his career. So Russell Wilson is actually playing some impressive football, and just because he completed 12 passes doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve his credit, because again, Sean Payton, I think now Sean is starting to get comfortable. The rust is shaking off some. He's winning some of these football games. Should they be 2-6 because of what happened against the Bears? Absolutely. But you look at the fact that the Broncos are able to win back-to-back football games, thankfully. They're able to beat the Chiefs in this game, knowing that the Chiefs had won literally 16 straight, had not lost since 2018. Patrick Mahomes was undefeated against the Broncos in his career, and now it all came down. And we see that Sean Payton, it seems like now, again, he's shaking that rust off. Vance Joseph is getting comfortable with the defense, because to know that the defense was the worst in the NFL walking into this game, and not only points per game, but also yards allowed per game. And you hold the reigning Super Bowl champs, the best quarterback in the NFL right now, and Patrick Mahomes, to no touchdowns, which he had the longest active streak in the NFL with a touchdown pass. And you hold them to no touchdowns as a team and 9 points overall. And again, the Broncos just chewed up the clock in this game. They kept Mahomes and Kansas City off the field. Coming out of halftime, the Broncos had 2 40-plus yard drives that ate 8.5 minutes and 6.5 minutes off the clock. And the Broncos used a lot of 22 personnel in this game to really spread the ball out, get push up for those 40 carries for 153 yards for Javonte Williams. And that was just their recipe to success in this game. Keeping everything simple for Russell Wilson is, I think, a thing that Sean Payton is going to realize from this game and try to implement as the season goes on. They're not asking him to do a lot against an elite defense in the Kansas City Chiefs. That's 4th in yards, 2nd in pass yards per game, but Sean Payton realized they were 19th in rush yards per game coming into this game, or before now, because I did some research after the game. But walking into this game, the Chiefs were susceptible to the run, average to below average in the league. Sean Payton realizing that and using a Javonte Williams to his advantage. You look at all of Russ's touchdown passes, they were short, they were easy, they were a short screen pass to Javonte Williams. He had a streaker to Jerry Jeudy over the middle, and then he had another touchdown pass that was very simple in the quarter of the end zone as well. So Russell Wilson was not asked to do a lot, and he played very well because of it. This Broncos defense that once allowed 70 points has now allowed 19 to the Chiefs, 17 to the Packers, and 9 to the Chiefs, respectively, in their last 3 games. Denver had 5 takeaways on Sunday, making Kansas City go 0 for 3 in the red zone, 3 for 10 on third down. And you got to say a big credit to Denver in this one when they're switching from they're switching from their defensive backs. You have Mathis and Bassey getting switched out for Moreau and McMillan. You see McMillan make a play. You see Moreau making plays out there. It was a much needed change in their secondary, and it immediately, paid dividends over the last couple of weeks. The Broncos, shockingly enough, I'm telling you, the Broncos, they were a sleeper of mine coming into the year. And I feel like right now, as this midseason is unfolding, the Broncos could be a team just like the Vikings, just I felt like the Ravens, turning that corner, making that push. I think this could possibly be it, because not only with all those other numbers I just read off to you about Russell Wilson, about this offense, about the way this defense played, the Broncos are second in the NFL with points scored on opening drives of games with 34 now. That means a lot, and that definitely means something for a team that hasn't had a lot of success really until the last couple of weeks. Again, they do beat the Packers by 2. They come out and beat the Chiefs by 15. Sky Moore should have had the touchdown pass to make it more interesting, make it a 21-16 game. But hey, things happen. The Broncos rolled with what they had, and ultimately all they can do is go forward. Kansas City, not much to take away from them in this game. Clearly, they were flat. The Broncos defense did well. Patrick Mahomes was pressured all game. They kept him off the field. Denver ran the football well, and ultimately was just really able to draw up a great game plan as they walked in. And crazy enough, just a little fun fact about this game, things that did not exist the last time that the Broncos actually beat the Chiefs: Disney Plus, Fortnite, AirPods, TikTok, White Claw. Those are all pretty recent things. So it's been a damn long time since the Broncos have beat the Chiefs. But 3 of the Chiefs' next 5 games are against the Eagles, Bills, and Dolphins. And all of those teams are already taking notice. Yes, they do have a Raiders and another game thrown in there as well. But 3 of the next 5, you're going against some of the best teams in the NFL. And just like I said with the Niners, just like I said with the San Francisco 49ers, it is not going to get easier for them. It's only going to get tougher. And all of those teams are absolutely taking notice. The Niners, speaking of them, they lose their 3rd straight game. They fall to the Bengals 31-17, as the Bengals now feel like they are back in action without question. And Joe Burrow, he's back. He's healthy. 28 of 32 on the day against that Niners secondary, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushing for 43 yards on the day. This is the Joe Burrow that we know. This isn't the Joe Burrow that we love, and this is the Joe Burrow that we recognize stepping up against big teams in big games. If there was any play early on that showed you that Joe Burrow was back, 3rd and 10, Burrow finesses out of the pocket, pass to T. Higgins on the sideline as Joe Burrow is taking a shot from the defender. He's healthy, he's comfortable, and he is back. He had a 3rd and 9 scramble in the second quarter as well. That wasn't happening a couple of weeks back. You can tell he's not afraid to take off, use that mobility. The Bengals' explosive pass plays also doubled their highest game total as they were coming into this game. They doubled up their explosive pass plays from within the last weeks. And Joe Burrow is now taking a lot less snaps from under the gun, about 25% less snaps from the gun, now going under center because that calf is healthy, because now he can roll out on those bootlegs and realistically be able to make plays in today's league. But we saw that offense rolling like we're used to with Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, 10 for 100 in a tub, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow with a best 19 straight completions in this game before he finally had one fall incomplete. And this is just what the Bengals needed, right? W off the bye week. They needed the bye week to propel them into this type of performance, into this type of team playing the Niners. And Lou Anarumo, you got to give credit to him as well. I'm not going to talk all about offense here. Lou Anarumo flashing his defensive presence again, forcing 3 second-half turnovers in this game. Cincinnati was a very clean team in this football game, just 1 penalty overall. And this is a game the last couple weeks of the NFL season, teams are really starting to come into their form. We're out of September, we're out of October. That November, December, January football is where it really matters. And hell, before we know it, y'all, the Super Bowl is going to be here. We're already halfway through the NFL season, and the Bengals are hitting the halfway point of the season in stride at a great time. And there's nothing that you can take away from them right now because they feel so on top of everything, because they just beat a smash mouth team, defense, coach in Kyle Shanahan and the Niners. You can't tell the Bengals anything right now. But Brock Purdy in this game, this is now the second straight game that Brock Purdy has a turnover to end the football game. We remember the two throws last week against the Vikings in crunch time for the interceptions. Brock Purdy throws two more interceptions in this game, back to back throws to turn into interceptions. He had thrown one home interception in his entire career up to this point. He threw two of them in this game. And I will give it to him. This was the George Kittle game. George Kittle had a lot of nice plays in this game. Brock Purdy clearly was favoring him, had a couple nice threads to him over the middle. And I'm glad that George Kittle day finally happened, just because a couple weeks ago I was like, all right, no Debo, Trent Williams. Now George Kittle's really got to get incorporated. He felt like he was just blocking more at first. And I know, dropping Trent Williams' name, you might have thought I was going to say, oh, we should block more. Hell no. With Debo Samuel not being out there at his fullest, at his fullest capacity, like, they needed George Kittle to be George Kittle, and he came through in this game, but of course it wasn't enough against the Bengals. But you can tell Brock Purdy, he's getting more mobile as the games go on. And I don't know if that's necessarily something that I see as getting more comfortable or possibly getting more skeptical, because when you don't have your blind side protected by your all-pro left tackle in Trent Williams, that's going to make you nervous. And I was just giving Brock compliments a couple of weeks ago. Like, this is what you like to see out of Brock Purdy. What quarterback is going to stand in the pocket that confident and go on to take a game down to the wire? Of course, they lose to the Vikings, lose a third one here against the Bengals. But I'll give it to Brock Purdy. He had a nice touchdown drive in this game to make it 24-17 in the fourth quarter. But San Francisco had no answer for Jamar Chase, who, again, 10 catches, 100 yards, touchdown, and just game-ending strip sack on Brock Purdy, which is pretty ugly. Brock Purdy has 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in his last 3 games. Of course, we know he's got a couple of fumbles as well. He had the ugly interception to Jermaine Pratt when he was trying to throw the screen pass. So there's just things that are continuing to happen for Brock Purdy as the weeks go on, and people want to say, oh, he's unraveling. Oh, Brock Purdy's starting to look like Mr. Irrelevant again. He's missing his blindside tackle, all-pro lineman, left tackle. Debo Samuel banged up. George Kittle just finally emerged. Like, he's going through growing pains. If Brock Purdy would have done this early on, we'd be singing different praises about Brock Purdy right now. But guess what? He's facing his first bit of adversity. He's facing his injuries. He's facing multiple losses now. He's going to be feeling the heat. Shanahan's going to be having different conversations with him. And that's okay, because he's a quarterback in the National Football League for the San Francisco 49ers, who are still a top team in the NFL. Yes, they did fall some in my power rankings, but stop making Brock Purdy such an easy target when we knew that Brock was the dead last pick in the draft. Brock is still playing solid football. Brock still got the Niners in position against the Browns to put them in the position to win the game. And outside of the couple of bad throws in the Vikings game, like, Brock was good. Now, this game, clearly he was not solid, and we see that Brock Purdy did not have a good football game. Now, you look at the numbers, wow, 22 for 31, 365 yards, a touchdown. But there's also 2 interceptions. He also lost that fumble to lose the game. He also rushed for 57 yards. So there's more than what the numbers are going to show you here. I'm going to go ahead and give those kudos to Christian McCaffrey, NFL record now with a touchdown in 17 straight games, which does include the postseason. The Niners trading for him last year was one of the best moves they made in recent history, and we know everything that CMC has brought to that team. But the Niners defense was diced up in this one, and they've been getting diced up on the runs, on the defensive side of the ball, especially line, that Kyle Shanahan had to make a move for a run stopper, for a potential pass rusher, and that's why they go ahead and go into Chase Young. San Francisco allowed 5 plays of 20-plus yards in this game, nearly half of Cincinnati's season total, which was 14 for Cincinnati through the entire 6 weeks. With 7 minutes to go in the second quarter, Cincinnati had more first downs than 49ers had plays run. And since the Niners lost to the Browns a few weeks ago, they've allowed 71 first downs and 370 rushing yards since losing a couple of weeks ago. And now that they're on this 3-game skid, it does not seem like it's going to get any prettier for the Jags. Not the Jags, any prettier for the Niners. They have the Jags, Bucks, Seahawks, Eagles, Seahawks, coming up next on their schedule. They only get the Bucks and the Seahawks at home. So they're going to get the Jags on the road. They're going to get the Eagles on the road. They're going to get the Seahawks on the road. Those are games that they could all very well go in and lose. If the Bucks also beat them and they split with the Seahawks, we're looking at San Francisco as a 5-3 team. Maybe now they're sub 500 in a few weeks from now. I believe Kyle Shanahan's better than that. I know that they'll be able to have, some of their players back healthier. I know that they'll be able to adjust as the season goes on. But damn, after being 5-0 now to 5-3, it starts to make you think as things start to unfold and unravel, what is this team really capable of in the middle of adversity? Because they just got wiped off the map by a Bengals team who's still trying to come around. And again, I think the Bengals do make a nice turn in this game. I do think the Bengals are back now. Joe Burrow looks fantastic. And there's nothing you can say, again, that's going to, take that confidence out of the Bengals. But the Niners got to tighten up. And I like that they do tighten up at this trade deadline. They bring in Chase Young. I think Chase Young's going to be a big difference maker. I understand he's an edge rusher, but I have a lot of faith in that Niners defense and especially in that coaching staff to put him in the right positions and make it worth that type of trade that the Niners just gave up for him. Now, as a Saints fan, I'm going to have to talk about my Saints here because, of course, as I don't expect them to win this football game, they go in and smack the brakes off the Indianapolis Colts, 38-27, scoring their highest point total of the year. Of course, their second highest point total was against the New England Patriots with the 34-0 win. I got to give credit to my boys being resilient in this one and not giving up because when we were down 17-7, Derek Carr strip sack, I'm just standing there at the TV like, oh, come on, man. Not to where, not in this type of game, not on the road, not against the Colts. Like, yes, we play better on the road, but damn, seriously, we were about to sit there and play that type of football game. But we had different plans because we outscored the Colts 31-10 after going down 17-7 in this game, overcoming a double-digit deficit to win by double digits on the road after Derek Carr got strip sacked, and that led to a touchdown. And to put it even more in perspective, the Saints were 1-8 in games dating back to last season when they were trailing by 10 or more points in just the second quarter. The Saints responded with an 8-play scoring drive that traveled 75 yards, ended with a 20-yard touchdown run from Taysom Hill to cut that lead to a field goal. We go out and get the 3-and-out, force a Colts holding penalty, and then Rashid Shaheed has a great return on the punt down to New Orleans' own 37-yard line. That set them up for a bold call to hit the 58-yard bomb from Derek Carr to Rashid Shaheed. Gave the Saints the lead, and they would not look back after that big bomb. And that's how you like to lead. That's how you like to finish on, one of your, last few scores of the game. That's how you like to push ahead. Let them know that you're capable of that. Let them know that you will go out there, 3 targets, 3 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Let them know that Derek Carr is getting comfortable with Rashid Shaheed, who is kind of looking like the wide receiver 1 right now. And keep on feeding Rashid Shaheed because I love this guy more and more every single week. And we see that him and Derek Carr are getting on that same page. Michael Thomas is coming around some more. We'd like to see Chris Olave already be on the same page, but it is what it is because we do see Rashid Shaheed holding down his weight and really just performing for this team. Taysom Hill. Most rushing attempts in a game since week 2. He had 9 for 63 in this game. He ran 9 for 75 in week 2, and that is a major aspect of what Taysom Hill is able to do. And we know that Taysom needs to be used more often. He needs to be in this offense. Not as much as possible, but as much as you can make it suitable for him. I guess that would be as much as possible. Then you want Taysom in there. And, they don't have another major big play threat in the backfield or really a big play threat like outside of Kamara and Shaheed. And that feels like enough, right? But knowing that Taysom can come in there, give you different looks, run the football, hell, even throw a pass if you need him to. 20-yard touchdown run was the longest rushing attempt of the season for the Saints. And that showed you that they don't have a lot of big plays out of the backfield with Kendre, with Jamal, with AK. The Saints are now 17-1 in football games where Taysom Hill runs 7 or more times. That's a big sample size. And we know that not always causation or correlation is direct, however that saying goes, the cause doesn't always directly correlate to what the numbers show you, but 18 games of when Taysom Hill has ran the ball 7 or more times and you've only lost 1 time. I said it earlier in the year, when the Saints use Taysom 7 or more times, they know how to make this guy get put into the football game in very good spots. And the Saints were able to utilize him in a very, very effective way. You love Isaiah Foskey coming in and making a big play as well. That was almost a scoop and score. I saw the arm going forward on the replay, so it does fall as an incomplete pass. But again, overall, the Saints were resilient in this game when they go down 17-7. And after I see Derek Carr get a strip sack and kind of get him rattled, I'm starting to worry about Derek Carr's attitude a little more and more as the season goes on, but it seems like it kind of tailored back in this game. I'm not going to be mad at him for yelling at receivers and trying to get them on the same page, but when they're not drawn up in the play and they're not even on the read, you just got to scale yourself back a little bit, but Derek Carr stepped up when he needed to in this game. He was efficient. He was dealing it. He wasn't overthinking anything. But Chris Olave and him still have to get on the same page because, to basically put the game away, to put the dagger in the game early on, Chris Olave had a touchdown literally bounce off of his helmet. The Saints are feeding Olave. He had a game-high 9 targets, but only 5 catches. And I can see the Saints and Derek Carr really trying to prioritize Chris Olave in this offense. And we know that Olave and Carr are going to need to have a lot more communication. We saw that the reports of them really working things out in the not in the bye week, but after the previous game, and wanting to get them more worked into the system to where they could be on the same page. I believe it'll mesh. I believe it'll happen. It'll come along. Chris Olave and Derek Carr are still going to be able to make, some great plays together. And I'm starting to get the feeling that it's going to be later in the season, which is okay with me because that's when we're going to need it the most. Of course, we need it now. But if you're saving something special for me for a few weeks down the road, I'm totally here for it. Again, Rashid Shaheed, 3 for 153 and a touchdown. Can't say enough about him. But the Saints are, and they have been, susceptible to the run. And that's why I was hoping they were buyers at this trade deadline. The Saints did not do anything at the trade deadline. But when Indianapolis wanted to run the football, they absolutely did it. They ran for 164 as a team on just 24 carries. Jonathan Taylor had 95 yards in this game. Oddly enough, only had 1 carry in the entire second half, and Shane Steichen said he wasn't hurt. 66 yards from Zach Moss as well. They both had gains of 40-plus yards at times during the contest. So we see that the Saints do have to get better on the defensive side of the football when it comes to running. And 371 yards and 27 points isn't the Saints defensive culture that we've seen lately. It's not the Saints that we've seen this year in more times than not. But I will say it was nice to see my team hang with a top 10 offense in terms of rush yards per game, pass yards per game, and points per game because the Colts can do that. And I would have liked to see us do it against a quarterback like Anthony Richardson. We know he is out for the year, unfortunately, but the Saints still put up 38 points and won a shootout by 11, 38-27 against a top 10 offense in rush yards, pass yards, and points per game. But the reason why I'm not going to be like, oh, this is the game that possibly saved the season, as some people are trying to say, because it's a bottom 10 team in defensive rush yards per game, defensive pass yards per game, and they are now dead last in the NFL in defensive points per game. Speaking of the Indianapolis Colts. And that's something that you just have to take into account. Like, it's just like when we beat the Patriots 34-0. That's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to go on and win that football game. Shutting them out is great. 34 points is absolutely immaculate. But you go in and win that game, and getting wins like that, yes, is going to make you better as a team. That is going to give you that reinforcement, that practice to know that when you got to put a game away, you got to do it. You're not playing down to your competition. But if the Saints do start to go on a roll, I do think we could look back at this game and be like, that Colts game, when we were down 17-7 in the second quarter, and when Derek Carr, had the strip sack and they ended up turning it into points, like we understood, or excuse me, down 17-7 after the strip sack, we understood that we didn't, like the Saints fans didn't want to see that game get away from them. The Saints don't. They outscored them 31-10 after going down 17-7, and the Saints just show that they can be resilient when they like to be. Now, the next few games, excuse me, let me get into this a little more, and then we'll talk about what's coming up for the Saints. We'll get our power rankings and get out of here. So the Saints went into this game, and I believe they still are the league's most penalized team. And that's not going to change, unfortunately, anytime soon, as it's going to be more discipline, more work that's got to be done internally with this team. They were flagged 8 times for 73 yards, giving up 3 first downs by penalties to Indianapolis, and the issues are really impacting every phase of the game. 4 penalties on the offense for false starts on Jawan Johnson, Garcia, Pete, and of course, Eric McCoy. The defense was flagged 4 times as well, twice for DPI against Marshawn Lattimore, which we don't like to see that, and we usually don't see that from Marshawn. He also had a holding call as well. And then we had a face mask on Carl Granderson, which usually Carl Granderson plays a pretty clean football game. He's been balling out for the Saints this year, one of our best defensive players without question. He's earning the bag that we gave him. But despite all of that, despite the Saints winning a shootout with a top 10 team, the Saints have still only won 2 of their last 4, and they've only the Saints have still lost 2 of their last 4, and they've lost 4 of their last 6. The Saints started 2-0, and now they're 4-4. 2-0, and now they're 2-4 down the stretch. The Saints have won 2 football games in the last month and a half. And that's pain to say. That's pain to think. Being at the Jags game, knowing that we possibly came back, Foster Moreau drops a touchdown pass, knowing that we could have beat the Packers, knowing that we stunk it up against the Bucs. Like, the Saints could be in a lot better position right now than they are. And everyone can say that about all their teams, right? When you're a diehard, you're going to remember moments, calls, plays that didn't necessarily go your way. And you can be like, damn, that really changed the trajectory of it. But the Saints still have to play better against better competition. They still have to win the football games that they're supposed to, not play down to their competition that they've liked to for the last couple of years. But you look at the schedule coming up. They got Chicago at home. The Saints will be at home taking on Chicago and Tyson Bagent. Obviously, we're going to go and play Minnesota, who just lost Kirk Cousins. They signed Josh Dobbs. So that's going to be interesting to see how that game plays out. I think we could take full advantage of Josh Dobbs. It depends on Justin Jefferson being in that game. Apparently, there's going to be no Jettas in that game, but we'll see. So we could easily be 6-4 going into this bye week, which will really benefit us because then we'll come out. I'll be at the Saints-Falcons game in Atlanta, and Atlanta just benched Desmond Ridder as well. So the Saints went from possibly playing Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, and Desmond Ridder to Tyson Bagent, Josh Dobbs, and now it looks like it's going to be Taylor Heineke. And it wasn't really a gauntlet of quarterbacks, but when you knew that there was a Trevor Lawrence you were playing, when you knew that there was a Kirk Cousins you were playing, when you know that there's a Jared Goff coming up that you're going to be playing, that was the thing, is the Saints weren't going to play a lot of great quarterbacks this year. They get a break at a good point in the season. They could easily go into the bye 6-4, come out, play Atlanta, beat them, be 7-4, and just be looking just a few games down in the season and saying, hey, we have a good of a chance as anybody to win this division and do what we need to do to play well in the playoffs. Let's go ahead and get into NFL Week 9 power rankings, and then that will be a wrap for the Halloween special of episode 49 of the NFL with AJL. So we've got a massive shakeup here with the NFL Week 9 power rankings. I know you guys see Miami falling all the way down to number 10. You're probably wondering why they did, because they beat the New England Patriots handily. But with this point of the NFL season now, we are halfway through it. I believe that there needed to be some adjustments here on the power rankings, because if Miami played every team that was above them, I would not expect Miami to win, because Miami has folded against good competition all year, and especially since last season. They still have that trait within them. Still going to have Philadelphia as the number 1 team here, no question. They win close to the Commanders at home, and we see with 2 of the last 3 weeks they're escaping the Commanders, so you would want to really think that they'll play better against that team, because there was still a Chase Young, there was still a Montez Sweat, but that is a division rival. They clearly understand how to stifle Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense. We know that they have to win in a shootout, talking about the Eagles. So the Eagles will stay at 1, no doubt. Now, Baltimore does win close to the Cardinals on the road. I'm going to move Baltimore all the way up to number 2, because I do believe they're better than Miami. I do believe they're better than Kansas City and San Francisco, who both just got blown out to lose their respective football games. So Baltimore is the number 2 team in the league. They're going to move Jacksonville up to number 3 as well. They win close to the Steelers at home. But when you have, again, Miami, Baltimore, Jacksonville, Detroit, Buffalo, Dallas, Cincinnati, Seattle, Minnesota, LA, everyone, that are still in these power rankings at some point in the top 15, when all those teams lose or win and Jacksonville's above them, they're just going to naturally slide up. Again, I moved Miami down for a reason, because I believe everyone above them would beat them. San Francisco and Kansas City obviously fall there to the 8 and the 9, like you see. I believe it's 8 and 9. Yes, to the 8 and the 9, like you see, because they have bad blowout losses. Detroit at number 4, they win to the Raiders at home, beat them, handily, 26-14. Solid game overall from Detroit. They beat a team that they are supposed to. Buffalo wins close to the Bucs at home on Thursday Night Football. I thought about putting that one on the slate, but because I was like, all right, watch, the Bills are going to go in, they're going to blow out the Bucs. Everyone's going to be back all over the Bills, and they're going to be like, look, the Bills are back. And I'm like, no, I'm not buying into it at all. The Buffalo Bills are who they are. Dallas Cowboys at number 6. They blow out the Rams at home. Not too much to say there. So Dallas is going to keep their spot. Cincinnati now gets to move up in the rankings some more. Of course, they could be higher, but I think at this point, if they did play some of the teams that are ahead of them on this slate, I think they would lose to them. Now they have a very good chance at, beating a Buffalo or a Dallas, but I think Baltimore, Jacksonville, Detroit, and Philadelphia would definitely be able to hang with them if they played at this point in the season. So I'm going to keep Cincinnati there. Of course, I put them above Kansas City. Of course, I put them above San Francisco as Cincinnati does blow out San Francisco on the road. I am going to drop Kansas City there to that number 8 spot as they get I say a blowout by the Broncos on the road because you don't put up a touchdown, you lose by 14, it's 25-9, like you don't even get to double digits. But again, if Sky Moore catches that pass, we're talking about a 21-16 game. And of course, who knows what would have happened after that? This is all what if. But knowing that the Chiefs could have been in that football game, nonetheless, they do lose. So they're going to drop there to number 8. Like I said, I got San Francisco at number 9 as they get blown out by the Bengals. And I'm going to put Miami at number 10 as I do believe if they played the Niners, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Bills, the Lions, the Jags, the Ravens, or the Eagles, that they would lose that football game. I'm not taking anything away from Miami. I have a lot of respect for them. I like them as a team. I want them to be in the AFC title game. I'd love to see a Tua and a Tyreek go and compete for a Super Bowl, but I don't believe at this point in the season with how they're playing, it's going to be very reputable or formidable for them. Number 11, the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, they win close to the Browns at home, handling business. They do what they need to do, so they're going to be able to stay put in these power rankings. The Minnesota Vikings win big to the Packers on the road. Beat them by 14. Of course, Kirk Cousins does go out with the Achilles, still has a great game. Now we see Joshua Dobbs is going to step in for him, so they could be falling off these power rankings soon, unfortunately. The Chargers win big to the Bears at home, do what they need to do, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay are going to sneak in here, or excuse me, yes, Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay are going to sneak in here as we round out these power rankings. Of course, we did see Pittsburgh at the 14 and or hell, who did I have? Yeah, Atlanta fell out. So we saw Atlanta in there last week at the 15. They lost to the Titans on the road. Their quarterback gets benched. They get diced up by Will Levis. So that definitely is going to make you drop outside. So Pittsburgh in at 15. Of course, they lose close to the Jags at home, but I think that's a more respectable loss than what Atlanta just witnessed. And then Tampa Bay as well. They're going to pop in at the 14. So from the 15 to the 1 for NFL Week 9 power rankings, I got Steelers at 15, Bucks at 14, Chargers at 13, Vikings at 12, Seahawks at 11, Dolphins at 10, Niners at 9, Chiefs at 8, Bengals at 7, Cowboys at 6, Buffalo at 5, Detroit at 4, Jacksonville at 3, Baltimore at 2, and the Philadelphia Eagles as the number 1 football team going into Week 9 of the NFL season. And this NFL season is flying by, y'all. I mean, the playoffs are going to be here before we know it. The Super Bowl is going to be here before we know it, which absolutely blows my mind. We were sitting here talking about 100 days until the NFL season, 90 days until the NFL season. We're pumped to see the Chiefs and the Lions playing in the opener. And now we are halfway through the year. The playoffs will literally be here in January, and we will be talking about these Super Bowl matchups and winner in February. This has been episode 49, Halloween special of the NFL with AJL. I love and appreciate everybody that tapped in to the show this evening. I know we didn't have a sponsor break, but we were just flying through everything. As always, though, we're sponsored by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate. Make sure you get at them on social media at Buy and Sell with AJL. Shoot them a DM if you want to get on their exclusive newsletter. You can even drop your email and name down in the comments to also get implemented on their AI that they have in the business as well, really benefiting all their buyers and sellers. Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs, turning clients into family by prioritizing people over transactions. That was episode 49 again of the NFL with AJL. I appreciate y'all for tapping in. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like and share the stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Go ahead and drop me a super chat if you'd like to donate to the channel. You can also drop me a super thanks if you'd like to donate to the channel and the cause directly on YouTube. Of course, the bell will give you every bit of YouTube content we drop. The QR code here, scan that. If you can't, the link is down in the description of this live at the NFL with AJL, hashtag the NFL with AJL. on all social media and podcast platforms. If you can't find me, you're simply not looking hard enough. We chopped up the NFL trade deadline, the Chiefs and the Niners losing, a little bit of NFL Week 8 recap, NFL Week 9. Yes, NFL Week 9 power rankings are now out for you. We'll be back with the 50 burger on Friday, episode 50 of the NFL with AJL. As always, I love you, I need you, and I will see you in episode 50.